All right, good morning. This is a meeting of the Administration Committee. It's 8:30 Tuesday, May 16th. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. All committee members are present. No citizens' comments?
No, sir.
First agenda item is approval of the previous meeting minutes, which are attached in the packet.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any changes or comments? All those approved, or say aye. The next is old business, which is the interviews. So we have 3 interviews for the Planning Commission. As you recall, we interviewed 2 candidates, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or so, 4 weeks ago. So we have 3 more today. It's Mark Mitchell, Stuart Freehour, and Richard Steinert. And I think each one probably is roughly 15 minutes. So I think the best way to do this, though, is if we have the ones we're not interviewing out in the hall, because we're going to ask the same kind of questions. So just to be fair, I think, is to do it that way.
Sure,
So I think Mr. Mitchell's first. Yeah.
that's right. And then I'll just go ahead and, I'll go ahead and come get y'all.
Okay.
You want to ask about the order?
Yeah, and then what we'll do is we'll go through these 3 interviews and then go through the rest of the agenda and then do an executive session, and we'll make a decision to bring the council at that point.
Perfect.
All right, thanks, Mark, for coming in. I'll start with the questions, but we received your application, and I guess my first question is why do you want to be part of the Planning Commission, and is your heart really into it? Because I think that based on the information that you did the bare minimum, it seems like,
Did
to
I
apply
really?
for it.
Well, I wasn't sure what I needed, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know. I guess I didn't realize that there's extra stuff in terms of what else did you need?
Well,
Tell me what
I
you
mean-
need. You want some background or
Well, I
a resume
think there's,
or-
the rest of the candidates had pretty extensive resumes and
Oh, really?
backgrounds.
Okay,
and, you know,
okay.
why, and
I didn't know that
pretty
was a
detailed
requirement,
answers, and yours was a pretty.
I probably didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. But I guess what, obviously, I was involved in the council quite a bit this fall, and I learned, my dad taught me a long time ago that if you're going to complain and have a problem with what's going on, you should be willing to be involved in the process. And so, yes, I'm committed to doing this. My heart's certainly in it. If you guys see fit that I would be an important part of this, I've got a background of being on the other side of planning commissions for a long time. I was with Enterprise Rent-A-Car and opened over 300 branches for Enterprise and spent a lot of time on the other side explaining what our business process was and being in front of planning commissions, and in the early days explaining to towns and cities why a rental car business wasn't a giant 18-acre business like you would see at the airport, but it was more of a neighborhood business. And so I've lived on and off this island since the late 80s, since the late 1980s. And, I'm a resident and like to think that I have a nice picture of what the island should be and look like. And just feel like I can bring a lot to the table in terms of, understanding and listening to what the process is. I am in the real estate business, and I know that scares some people. And not involved in vacation rentals, as has kind of been misunderstood a little bit. I'm not a part of our vacation rental business. I'm just purely in my job in the real estate business now, that has kind of been my second career since I retired from Enterprise, has been selling homes on the island, and then have become the broker in charge. So when a negotiations or transactions kind of gets tied up in a knot, then they call me and I kind of help unwind it. But I believe I just, I guess all I've seen is the finished product at City Council, right? And so understanding where the numbers from, and obviously a big part of the challenges with some of the issues that were happening this fall were the, the statistics and not really understanding what the numbers were in the statistics. And I think it's important that our citizens understand and know where, where the process is and how the process is. So yes, I guess that's the long way of saying yes, my heart's in it. It's fine.
Okay, now, I have some other questions, but in fairness, I want to open.
And I'm certainly willing to provide anything you guys want. And I probably misunderstood the process and what you guys needed. So that's my bad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark, you indicated on your application that you're interested in how the Isle of Palms community evolves as a city and how we interact and partner with our neighboring communities to the benefit of our citizens and stakeholders. Can you tell me a little more about your thoughts behind that and what your vision would be to make that happen?
Yeah, I think we sometimes get confused at what our number one priority is on the island, and that's the safety of our people. That's really the number one priority. And so by having a plan that encourages businesses that are gonna provide that and make sure that we have a long-range plan of not only public safety, but all the other aspects to this island, the financial aspects of where our tax dollars come from and all that, and being a part of that plan is important. Two glaring in the years, and I've been back now 16 years on the island, the second time, two glaring challenges that I see, and when our last round of candidates asked me what were the most important things that I'd like to see happen, is to bring more people together and to be less divisive on the island. And I think when I filled that application out, that was what was driving me crazy. Is that the council and our administration, or the city has a unique opportunity. We've got, for as long as I can remember, we've got the people that live inside the gate at Wild Dunes. We've got people that live outside the gate at Wild Dunes. And what are we doing to try to make everybody feel like we're part of it? And being a part of city council, but more importantly, being a part of any committees or planning committees should involve bringing people together instead of bringing up issues that are going to divide us. And by the same token, obviously, COVID really brought it out, is what our relationship is and what the perception is of the community of our island. Are we a welcoming community, or are we a community that says, we kind of live here and you're visitors, and we'll tolerate you, but that's it? And I see more and more, I think our neighbor to the south has glaringly sent messages to the community around us and to visitors that, yeah, we'll tolerate you as long as you can fit into our little box of how we want you. I mean, I used to go, when my office was right across the street, I used to go over to Sullivan's Island for lunch. You can't do that anymore. You have to drive around for an hour trying to find a damn parking place. They obviously don't want anybody around coming over for lunch. They didn't want a bridge that was more accessible. I was the head of the School Improvement Council at Sullivan's Island Elementary School when they had to tear down the old building and shut down the old building. There was fortunately it wasn't huge, but there was a pretty large faction of people in Isle of Palms that didn't want that school anymore because they didn't want, more people in the community coming onto their island. And I don't want to see us that way. I just see all these examples of, we don't want any of that on this island. And I don't want Isle of Palms to be that way.
Thank you.
Does that help? I don't know if that answers the question.
Oh, yes. Are you familiar with the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan at all?
Not in depth. I know that a big part of that comprehensive plan has been to does livability and to try to make this island more of a residential, protect the residential nature of the island. So I think, but I don't know all the details and the specifics of the details. And if I gave the impression that I didn't think we had a plan, I hope I didn't make that comment.
Well, no, I was going to leverage a little bit off of Rusty's comment, and
Yep.
the vision statement says to be a welcoming, environmentally conscious, and resilient coastal community committed to enhancing the quality of life for those who come here to live, work, and play. And you mentioned that you had a vision of what you think the Isle of Palms is to be common. A lot of what I think the Planning Commission does in the comprehensive plan, there are different components like environmental, resource use, land use, and things of that nature. And they sort of get into the nitty-gritty of those issues that are either assigned to them or they're working on from the council and from the town. What do you see, or where do you see your contribution being to the Planning Commission? And talk a little bit about that vision, Mark, if you could, and how what skill sets could you bring to that body that they don't currently have?
Well, I'm not familiar with what we don't currently have, I guess, in terms of what each member does or doesn't have as an expertise. I think that from a business standpoint, I look at the Isle of Palms kind of as a business, certainly in terms of how we handle our resources with respect to balancing off, again, the welcoming piece of it, when we make decisions of how we handle tourists that come in for the day trippers, obviously renters, and so how we respond to that from a standpoint of understanding, what our how important is those dollars to our viability as an island, for instance, the tax dollars and the accommodations taxes and things like that to our island is an important part. When it comes to how we manage, for instance, stormwater and drainage and things like that on the island, obviously that's a big aspect that needs to continue to be hopefully monitored to make sure we're actually going to finish the projects that we got going, and asking those right questions. As a manager of an operation that had 500 employees, I'm pretty good at asking the questions and trying to understand what, where we are in a process and why we're where we are in a process, whether it's needing more resources, needing more people, or we're just moving too slow. I don't know, but I think that's a resource that I'll have. I was taught a long time ago that I have one mouth and two eyes and two ears for a reason, and that's to try to listen and learn, and that'll be a big part of what I would be doing as part of this too. I certainly I wouldn't come into this with any delusions that I have all the answers or any answers. I mean, certainly I've got some pretty good experience again on being on the other side of planning commissions and running a business and running a city is pretty similar to running a business, or it should be anyway.
Okay, thank you.
I do have another question, if you do. Thank you. Mark, the Planning Commission, of course, have you watched or attended any of the Planning Commission meetings?
I haven't.
Fairly recent?
I have
Okay.
not.
Well, it's a pretty diverse group of people on the Planning Commission, and they have a lot of spirited conversation. They get very much in depth with not only the comprehensive plan, but other things that they're tasked to do by council here.
Okay.
And they do a good job.
Yeah.
You have a very varied background in business, strong background, and with that, knowing that you'd have diverse personalities, diverse opinions on council, can you tell me how you would go about handling a situation like that if you're confronted with having to ask questions under pressure, problem-solving skills, and working with a diverse group? Hope that was clear.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess an example maybe?
Yeah, an example would be great if you can think of one.
As far as diversity is concerned, I can tell you that our company recognizes being when I was with Enterprise, my experience, believe it or not, almost 35 years ago, our company identified, being in the car business, that about 50% of our business was very diverse. Had we rented cars to everybody and then matched the population. But when you looked at our employee base, it was a bunch of white guys that worked there, because those were the people that were in the car business back in those days. And we learned real quickly that we needed to change how our plan was. And so we developed training, kind of revamped our whole system to be one of the leading examples of creating cultural diversity, making sure that our business looked like the population, and not a small population, but the overall population in terms of that. And the answer to the diversity question is that you do it not because you have to, but you do it because it makes your organization better, makes you more profitable, makes your business better, because you get better ideas and you get better feedback, and it strengthens you as a business. And same thing with a community. I mean, our community needs to be more diverse, but also the people that work here and the people that represent our community need to be more diverse in terms of being able to answer those questions. So if there's a specific situation that was involving, a diversity issue or creating a better environment for all of our people, I'm pretty sure I've been through just about every example that you can imagine.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Maybe I missed something.
No, but and it may be an add-on, but I think what Councilman Streetman was referring to most likely was a diversity of thought.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you'll have a lot of varying and different thoughts amongst that planning
Absolutely.
commission, as we do on council.
As council,
but-
obviously, we learned that
Yeah.
this fall.
And
certainly.
I think it's how do you handle,
Yeah, yeah,
that diversity? Do you open mind, you listen, or do you more
Well,
subversive?
The best
How do you
example, I
handle-
guess, the best example I can give you in a close range situation was the like the listening sessions that I attended during the fall that we had over the whole rental, the daily rental cap thing, and really enjoyed that to the extent I know I made a comment in council that we should continue doing those, and that was probably the best thing that either the planning committee or the council put, whoever's idea that was, to have those listening sessions. I think that was great, and not just for that one topic. I'm talking about for all those topics, because I enjoyed answering and listening to everybody's. I mean, I sat at a table with 50% residents and people who had a different opinion than I did, and I wanted to know that. I wanted to understand it, because if I have a strong opinion on one side, then my goal is to understand what somebody that has a differing opinion I need to understand why they have it. And you got to, again, listening and understanding and trying to understand where that comes from is an important piece of that. So that, I guess that's an example. I felt like I kind of was the leader at the table and didn't really do much talking, because I really wanted to, at that point and that stage in the process, I really wanted to understand where the underlying desire was and what people really were wanting. That somebody that really wanted to affect their neighbor's property, well, if they felt that strongly about limiting what their neighbor was wanting to do with their property, I needed to understand where that was coming from.
Any other questions?
I'm all set.
Good.
All right.
that good?
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. I
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you for what you guys do. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
So, who's next, Stuart?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Is Stuart the next?
Yes.
Stuart? We're going to do- You're welcome.
Hey, Stuart.
Hey, good morning.
Thanks for having interest and coming in this morning.
Sure.
I'll start off, and the rest of them we'll just kind of tag team here and ask
Sure.
questions along the way. But my first question is, Stuart, and I know you supplied your application and your resume along with it, but my general question is, why are you interested in the planning commission? What makes you want it? And
Sure. So I've had a house here for coming up on 20 years. I've been a permanent resident for about the last 7 years. And I'm getting to a point in my career where I'm not quite as involved or transitioning towards retirement. And, I've never been on a planning commission. I've never really served on a civic board or done anything like that. And I think I'm just kind of interested in serving my community. I love Isle of Palms. I will be here the rest of my life, and always planned on retiring here, and that's what's going to happen.
And your background is in financial?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've essentially studied the stock market for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
So I'm a financial accountant by training and certainly a financial analyst type person.
Yeah, yeah. All right. I'll open it up to the,
Go ahead, Rusty.
Oh, okay, thank you. Stuart, in regards to the planning commission, have you attended any of the meetings or watched any of the meetings?
I have watched a few meetings online.
Okay. I'd like to get your perspective on how you notice them interacting with each other. And I guess more importantly, how do you see the Isle of Palms evolving as a city with you being a part of the planning
Sure.
commission?
I think, the town has had, people have opinions. I think that we went through some issues around, the short-term rental thing, for example. I think tabling that and kind of let it settle out, and let's see how many rentals we really have and the pressure on that may have been caused by the pandemic or not. I think that was a good decision. I think I would say I have a balanced view of, too much growth is a bad thing, but no growth is that's not a great thing either. So I think this island's not getting any bigger. It's not like everybody can move to the suburbs and the place just gets bigger. So I think you have to be measured in allowing growth, for lack of a better word, I guess. I think there's a place for vacation rental ownership. Obviously, that's a big part of the people that own second homes here and stuff like that. But the permanent residents, you got to balance that with the people who live here permanently. So I would call it measured view of where the island is going. And I don't have as a homeowner here for the last 20 years, like I said, I think the town's growth has been well managed. I think it's been well managed, and I think, there's always people who have an opinion one way or the other. It's not perfect for everybody, but I think it's been well managed.
Thank you.
Okay. Stuart, are you familiar with the strategic plan and the local comprehensive plan?
Not
at all? The beach
specifically. I
plan?
know that we have one.
Okay, well, I'll just, got a question kind of surrounding that. The vision statement of the strategic plan says to be a welcoming, environmentally conscious, and resilient coastal community committed to enhancing the quality of life for those who come here to live, work, and play. Do you have sort of your own vision of what the Isle of Palms might evolve into over the next 5 or 10 years? And I spent a little time on the Planning Commission. A lot of what the Planning Commission does is sort of project-oriented or zoning-oriented or obviously planning-oriented. And maybe you could tell me a little bit about, with your skill sets, what you could bring to that and what your vision of Isle of Palms would be in the next 5 to 10 years.
Sure. I think a continuation, there's the relationship with Wild Dunes and the hotel, which brings, at the second hotel there, has brought more traffic and more visitors to Isle of Palm, undoubtedly. And I live at Wild Dunes, so I'm familiar with that challenge there. That also creates a lot of tax revenue. And the island, certainly on an infrastructure basis, has some needs, whether it's the drainage on Palm Boulevard, other type of things like that. So I don't see a big change in the way the island is going. I think there's plenty of houses here that as you drive around, you can see that they're being torn down and being upgraded. That helps property tax revenue, obviously, and it pays for some of the improvements that we want. We had a big town issue around the marina and all of that, and obviously the permanent residents wanted one thing, and the second homeowners and the people around Wild Dunes largely wanted something different. That's how I would characterize that. So again, I think it's got to be balanced. And, ultimately, I think my vision for the island is a continued kind of trajectory up and to the right. I think the values and it's always been interesting to me that the difference between Kiowa and Isle of Palms, and obviously the real estate values at Kiowa are significantly higher than Isle of Palms. And I used to tell people, like, they would say, "Why'd you buy a house at Isle of Palms?" And I was like, because I was in Charlotte for a long time, and I was like, well, Isle of Palms is closer to Charlotte. Kiowa's 45 minutes further, and it's about half the price. I mean, it was like a no-brainer. Never understood why it was so much cheaper than Kiowa. And so I've told all my friends, I'm like, you're crazy. You got to buy an Isle of Palms. Unless you're like a serious golfer, there's no other reason to really be out in Kiowa. Plus, it's way past Charleston. You can't go downtown that easily. So I think there's a huge opportunity here to continue to grow the island. I don't see a lot of, nor would I want, a lot more capacity, if you want to call it that. Like, you know, we're not going to turn around and zone a lot more residential lots and stuff like that. I think that's a negative. And I think my skill set for the Planning Commission largely is managing or, you know, projecting and kind of seeing how do we get tax revenues up to pay for the infrastructure that the island needs.
Can I ask you a
think that's-
follow-on question on that?
Yeah.
I don't know if is your fund private equity or?
It's publicly traded.
Public traded, okay.
Stocks.
So so you're allocating capital.
Yes.
And I guess my question would be, say, one of the big sections within the comprehensive plan is priority investment. Aside from drainage, because everybody puts drainage usually,
Yes.
that's the go-to answer. What would you see as maybe the top three priorities where, if you're driving around the island or you look at our future, again, over the next 5 years, where should we be investing, you know, as a priority investment on the island to help achieve these goals as far as the vision goes?
Well, I think, you know, erosion or the beach is a challenge, to say that, you know, Mother Nature is Mother Nature. And I guess I've had 2 assessments since I've been here to protect the Wild Dunes Beach, at least. So that is an issue, and that involves bringing in federal and state money as well. So that's one thing. I think, you know, fire and police is always required, or, you know, we got to have that, obviously. And we have a nice new fire station down there by the marina, and staffing and things like that are always, you know, those people need to be paid fairly and those kinds of things. And, you know, we had the issue around the shooting out on the beach and stuff like that. And that's a very complicated, I'm not going to sit here and say I have an answer for that. But you got a lot of people coming from Mount Pleasant, obviously, and this is the closest beach for them, and coming from Charleston as well. And that just needs to be studied. I don't have an answer for that, but that's an area that's got to be invested in, whether it's more beach shuttles or whatever we're doing with this park down here and the access to that, and managing that with the city of Charleston, because we all benefit from the city of Charleston. That relationship is important. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, one other, Mr. Chair. Speaking of City of Charleston, how do you feel about the relationship between City of Isle of Palms and our neighboring communities, and how, on the Planning Commission, would you like to see that influence to have a more collegial relationship? Could you give us some thoughts on that?
I'll go off the record, not off the record, but just, I mean, the whole situation with Sullivan's Island during COVID, when we could not cross past the boathouse over to Sullivan's without a receipt to go to a restaurant or something, was ridiculous. But I won't digress on that. No, I think it's a very important relationship, and it needs to be more collegial, without question. And, you know, my view, this is not maybe related to the Planning Commission, but this thing about the taxing thing, where we're going to take the word escapes me, accommodations tax or whatever, we're going to manage it ourselves away from the city of Charleston. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I don't have the full details on all that. So I think it needs to be more collegial, and we benefit certainly from what's going on in Mount Pleasant and in downtown Charleston. It brings a lot of visitors here. They spend money. They stay in hotels and pay taxes. So I think that relationship has gotten worse more recently, And I would hope that that would improve over time. Back to how it was, I guess, initially when I moved here.
Thank you. Sit, Mr. Chair. Anything else?
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Stuart.
Sure.
Nice to meet you, Stuart.
You too. Thanks.
Hi, Richard.
Go ahead, Rich or Richard?
Rich. Well, thanks for coming in this morning, Rich, and having interest in the planning commission. We'll kind of tag team this questions, but thanks for your application, very impressive resume you supplied. I'll just start off by asking, and I know you gave a little bit of explanation of this, but why do you want to be on the planning commission?
Well, I think, background for that is, I've lived here, I guess, permanently for about 4 years, and I've been coming to Isle of Palms for about 20 with my family, and really love the island, love the area. We've enjoyed it as a family and continue to. As a permanent resident now, really interested in just seeing it continue to be a great place, a great neighborhood, and that's what it is for me right now. Great place to live, great neighborhood, as well as a great destination for visitors. And I think the Planning Commission really kind of lends to that in a sense of making sure that, we're looking towards the future, we're looking towards, what are the resources we have and how best to make that a great place for those of us who are residents here as well as people who are visiting to enjoy themselves. So my interest is having the ability to help with that, work with the commission, and help to make recommendations that really help the city. So.
And your background is, it looks like in the chemical industry, correct? Or-
Yeah, I'm a chemical engineer by trade, and then worked in manufacturing for about 25 years specifically. So a lot of familiarity with building construction, the resources, the requirements of facilities, plants, where you locate them, what you do with them, and of course, maximizing the use of the resources that you have. The last 10 years of my career was actually in health and safety. So I was a director of health and safety for a chemical company, always looking at, how do we be more sustainable? How do we protect the personnel, the people? And again, how do we, use as little resources as possible, if you want to say, from the environmental side of things.
All right, thanks. I'll open it up to the rest of the committee.
Thank you. Rich, have you watched any of the planning commission meetings or attended any of them in the past?
I have not attended any of the planning commission meetings. I have watched some of them, yeah.
What's been your takeaway with the dynamics of the commission itself when you've watched those? We have a number of members in the community that are there, and they're all diverse in their opinions and thoughts. What's been your takeaway from that, and what do you think you could bring to the table to add to that?
Yeah, one of my neighbors, David Cohen, is on the commission, and we've talked about it as well. Is what's the dynamic? How's it work? And what I've seen as well. And overall, I think it works quite well. And I think there's a diversity of both forward-looking as well as very practical viewpoints. And that's one of the things that I've talked with David about is trying to bring, I'd say, a practical viewpoint to the planning committee in terms of what can be done, where it goes, and where it goes forward as well. As an engineer, I tend to be quite practical, but just the nature of things. So, and I think that's part of the reason David was like, well, it'd be good to have somebody else kind of on the, kind of practical viewpoint on what's going on. So,
Thank you.
All right. See if I can tee up this question again here. The Planning Commission does a lot. I spend a lot of time on there, and it's very project-oriented or assignment-oriented, and helping to build, I think, some plans for the future and give some guidance to the council. Are you familiar with the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan? Have you read any of that, or are you familiar with any of the components?
I'd have to say, no, I haven't.
Okay. Well, in the vision statement, it says to be a welcoming, environmentally conscious, and resilient coastal community committed to enhancing the quality of life for those who come here to live, work, and play. What do you have for a, quote, vision for the Isle of Palms over, say, the next 5 to 10 years with all the pressures we have with the surrounding growth in the surrounding communities? And what do you think you can bring to the table to help us prepare for what's coming ahead?
Oh, good question. Well, I think, this is an island, and it's limited in terms of space and capacity. And as we've all seen over the last number of years, there's been a lot of change in terms of building residential properties, a lot of the old properties getting torn down, new properties getting put in, which is all good, but also we need to balance, I think, the view on how do you make this a good residential location, as well as something that, because we obviously have rental properties and things like that, and people are using it as to some degree a business, I guess you'd say, which is important. We need to have the tourist industry. We need to have visitors. I think it's important for us to balance those two things in terms of what we do for the residents, in terms of having a lot of the amenities and things like that that are important for the residents, but also supporting our businesses by allowing it to be a good visitor location, a tourist location, which is safe, comfortable, not overwhelming. We don't want to be Myrtle Beach. We don't want to be a overcrowded, overbusy. And it's one of the reasons that we moved here and started coming here as a family, just because it was much more of a community-oriented location, wasn't mobbed with people. And I think when you talk about what do you have to do in terms of strategic plan is a lot towards that. Continue to focus a lot on what's important for the residents, but making it still very convenient for your, the surrounding communities, Mount Pleasant, Charleston, and visitors from out of town to come and enjoy the location, and make it safe, comfortable, enjoyable, as well as at the end of the day profitable for the businesses living here.
I ask a quick follow-up question. Your background, your resume is impressive, and I noticed you did have some experience in sustainability. What is your thoughts on, are there things we could be doing as an island to ensure that we do have sustainability, either of our environment or balance or things of that nature? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's important to always have a balance of, constructed properties as well as, if you want to say, open areas, parks, trees. I think it's very important that we protect a lot of that aspect of the island, which, I live over near Forest Trail. It's a wonderful combination of living in kind of a forest next to the beach, and you wouldn't want that to change, because I think it really adds a lot. When you talk about sustainability, you also have to have what do you do with rainwater. Where does waste go from the properties? I do get a little bit concerned sometimes when we have houses that take up the entire footprint of a property and has nowhere for rain to go. So that's a thing you have to look at in terms of runoff. How that impacts the environment, how that impacts the wetlands. That is a fantastic part of it. I mean, I want to say is one of the great things about living on an island like this is having the whole wetlands and the intercoastal and all of that. Protecting that's important as well, and making sure that the growth on the island and what comes off of it is balanced with that. I think the community's done well as also with recycling and having a lot of the things that we're able to do and being able to deal with the kind of waste that comes off of the island in a sustainable way. Yeah, I think those are kind of the key points for me.
Thank you.
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks, Rich. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rich.
Good meeting you, sir.
Take care.
All right. So we'll come back and go in executive session and make a decision at the end of the meeting. The next is new business, 5H, discussion and consideration of changes to section 1-4-31 to clarify position of city attorney and include provisions for the appointment of city prosecutor. There's some information and changes in the packet, but maybe Desiree has some background. You can discuss this item.
Sure, be happy to. So this is twofold, essentially. The recommendation that is being made for City Council to amend the section of the City Code that deals with the appointment of the position of city attorney. You all recall, late last year, the city council decided to move in a slightly different direction by hiring a firm to represent the city. I think, we discussed at length at that time the benefits of doing that. We have access to a gamut of expertise from the legal world that could, form a comprehensive legal team for the city. And the recommendation that's being made is to clarify language in the code that would allow, essentially, memorialize the fact that city council can either appoint an individual, which is what we have been doing for many years, or a firm. So this is just a clarifying language. The city council can appoint and hire judges at any time, attorneys at any time. They serve at the pleasure of council. They can be terminated at any time as well. Again, that's up to city council. So another change in the red line that you can see there includes just eliminating the term of the office. We don't want to, I think it was a little bit of, there was a discrepancy there with saying you serve at the pleasure of council, but then your appointment is a year. I think eliminating that should be clear that, that they serve, once an attorney is appointed, the city can appoint another attorney at any time of the year. So we're eliminating that. Also, just making sure that any lawyer, not only the city attorney, has to be admitted to to practice law in South Carolina. That language only referred to the city attorney. We hire attorneys for a variety of issues, so I think that there's no harm in adding that requirement to the code. And then the other piece of this recommendation is to include provisions for the appointment of the city prosecutor. The code doesn't speak to this, and I think the city council should appoint a city prosecutor. They're the ones who represent all the cases that go through the municipal court on behalf of the city. We've had a long-term city prosecutor for a long, long time. As you can see, he has now put a proposal together for you all to consider, and we're recommending him to be appointed as an associate judge. We have that later on the agenda. So we're going through the RFP process now to get proposals from attorneys to serve in the the city prosecutor position, and wanted to clean that up in the code so that this is something that will go through the administration committee and through council and then ultimately appointed by city council. So this is just an addition to that provision there in the code.
So this is just cleanup of language in the code that reflects actually what we're doing today.
That's correct.
Yeah. And so the process would be for us to take this to council, and is there two readings on this? Or?
Yes, sir. My recommendation is that the committee makes a recommendation to council to have first reading on this at the May meeting next week, and then it's ratified after two readings.
Make a motion to bring to council for first reading?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion on the matter?
Nope.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
So the next item, and you've already alluded to, Desiree's consideration appointment of Chris Skipper as associate judge. I guess we don't have an associate judge right now, so this is replacing that position.
That's correct.
And the recommendation and his background and letters of recommendation are all in the packet. Is there anything you'd like to add on that?
No, we've had a longstanding relationship with Christopher Skipper as our city prosecutor. We've had a great relationship with him. He's an exceptional attorney. He also serves as a judge in the city of Folly Beach. So I think his resume, his letters of recommendation speak for themselves. My recommendation is that we appoint him as the associate judge. We have an increasing caseload in the municipal court. We currently only have one court date a month, sometimes two, but that is something that we're looking to change and increase the number of courts that we have, so that he would serve as an associate municipal judge for the city. The code already specifies the city council appoints one or more municipal judges So this would be the process, of recommendation from this committee to council for appointment.
Make a motion to recommend to council to approve?
Second.
All right, any other discussion on the matter?
Mr. Chair, I would just say that, knowing the relationship we've had with Mr. Skipper over the years, and certainly his resume and the letters of recommendation, this is a very sound motion and second, I think, for us to take to council. Thank you. Any comments?
All right.
So before you all make a motion or vote on the motion, we have a request for proposals out to gather and get applications from attorneys to serve in the city prosecutor position, since hopefully he's appointed by council. Our goal would be to make the appointment effective July 1st, so that it gives us the ability to fill the city prosecutor position.
So he
in
would
the meantime.
continue to function as the city prosecutor until that position's filled, even if it passed that point?
We're hoping that that would not be the case. There's a lot of interest in the city prosecutor position, and the city, Mac McQuillan will be helping us, in vetting some of these applicants, as well as the clerk of court. So we're hoping, I don't have the date in front of me, but I believe,
June 16th is the deadline for it.
okay, so we have the deadline for the proposals, June 16th. Hopefully that gives us an opportunity to get through the process and have somebody appointed by the end of June, and we can start. But I think we'll play by ear, but the goal would be that he would start serving in the associate judge role once another person has been appointed for the city prosecutor
Okay.
position.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We have two nominations for the Spirit of the Island Award. The first one being Ted Kinghorn, who was nominated by Jim Thompson. I guess his application and some letters of recommendations are in there. Any discussion on this?
Mr. Chair, I would say that, reading over the application and the nomination and the letters of support, and I think the work that Mr. Kinghorn has done in service Lynn's and in the community, I would wholeheartedly support this nomination.
I would agree with that. I think Ted has committed himself to many projects on the island, and he's a bit of a forward thinker. And I think to sum him up, he likes to use the term "the art of the possible," and I think he tries to, as some of these recommendations say, whether they're popular or not, he tries to pursue opportunities and bring them to light for discussion, and I think he's accomplished that. So I would support this.
All right, do I have a motion?
I would make a motion, Mr. Chair, to consider the nomination of Ted Kinghorn for the Spirit of the Island Award.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The second one is for the Acme Low Country Kitchen. This is made by Councilmember Ward. Again, it's the letter of recommendation, and some letters are in there. I think that the Acme Low Country has come forward and supplied a lot of meals to our first responders, the police and fire, even during the holidays and times of non-crisis. But certainly the shootings on the most recent shootings on the beach, they really stepped up. So I support this, but I'd open it up to other comments.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would support it also. We have a lot of great businesses and individuals on this island who do a lot to help out in time of need. And Acme Low Country has always stepped up, been at sort of the forefront of whatever we've needed. And again, the application and the letters of support all look very solid to me, so I wholeheartedly support.
Just one last comment. They're resident and visitor friendly. They support the beach sweep. I've participated in some of their events, and they've sponsored some after events, meals, and things of that nature. I think they're a critical part of the community, and I would support this as well.
So do I have a motion?
Motion to nominate Acme Low Country Kitchen to the Spirit of the Island Award.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next meeting date, what is the next meeting date, Nicole, or do you know, or?
June 6th would be
June 6th.
your regular standing
so-
meeting, first Tuesday of the month.
And I think all members are available still, then, right? June 6th?
Yes.
Good, good for me.
All right, so we'll have it at the regular to 8:30.
Perfect.
Obviously, if there's no agenda items, we won't have it, but we'll keep that date on the calendar.
All right?
Motion to go into executive, I'm sorry, is there anything you want to
Nope.
No.
go to the executive session?
Second.
All right, in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act 30-40-71, to discuss the appointment of candidates